So besides the Roman army, Augustus will also recognize the need to add to it. You've got 4,000 miles of frontier to cover, and there are only so many Romans and so many Italians now. The population's dropping. He recognized this. And so he will add to it the idea of auxiliaries that come, join the Roman army. You may not be Roman or even Italian, but you can join what are called auxiliaries because there just aren't enough Romans to cover everything. So the idea is to use the people of the empire. All these people have joined the empire or under the empire's control now. Let them defend themselves. Let them patrol their own area. And how do you get people to do this? How do you get people to be part of your empire and then protect it from other people? Well, it's kind of difficult actually, but you've got to give them something in return. And so if they will join the army, if they will join the Roman protection system, this is a way of putting Roman laws into them. They have to use Roman laws. They have to use some Latin. Some of them will learn it. And so they kind of Romanize themselves, and you give them rights. If they will participate in this system, when they come out of it, they will have the rights of Roman citizens. And it's actually very successful, this idea, this offer that if you'll defend yourself against other people around you, you'll be given rights. And of course, there'll be financial benefits both ways. If you help the Romans, you'll get financial benefits. And of course, Rome will benefit also from the fact that we don't have to defend all these people of the empire. And it works really well, surprisingly well. There's something about the Romans, again, this idea of loyalty, that they are extremely loyal if you are loyal to them and back, and people somehow respond to it. It's not always the case. But you know, there's always the case of somebody going against the Romans, backstabbing them. But the Romans come down very harshly on that. But if you're ever in trouble, the Romans will be there. In other words, kind of a neighborhood patrol. If you'll patrol your own neighborhood, if there is trouble, the Romans will come to the rescue. It might take them a while. But again, this is a way of patrolling a 4,000-mile frontier. Romans don't have to be everywhere. They'll just kind of set up some stations where they can get to trouble spots easily. It's a really interesting idea, the idea of Roman auxiliaries, using non-Romans to patrol their own area. I do want to mention one great failure. There was trouble in Paradise. One incident, we know that Augustus on his deathbed mentioned this one failure of his. In the year 9 AD, one of his commanders, a guy named Varus, you don't need to memorize his name, but it's kind of famous, the name Varus, took some legions over the Rhine. This is from Gaul into the German areas across the Rhine. And he had spies helping him, and they told him that, you know, there's some German tribes that are willing to cooperate. They'll participate in this auxiliary system, helping you against other Germans. 3 legions went over. 18,000 troops went over the Rhine to deal with these Germans, apparently peaceful Germans, and they were bushwhacked or ambushed in the Teutoburg Forest. This is a hilly, wooded forest, and so they're winding their way through these mountainous trails, and are set upon, ambushed, kind of the way Hannibal was able to ambush Romans. Romans, when they're on the march, are kind of vulnerable. And so here they were in the Teutoburg Forest, didn't know their way around, they're relying on these spies who set them up for an ambush, and 3 legions just disappeared. And of course, it haunted Augustus to his deathbed. But the lesson here is that the Germans need to be left alone. The Romans will return to the Rhine River and the Danube River and just leave these Germans alone for hundreds of years. Just leave these Germans alone. And more Germans are going to start piling up along that frontier, along the Rhine and Danube River over these hundreds of years. I do want to mention also the Praetorian Guards. Augustus set up this idea. It's not so much important right now, but it's going to become important later, this idea of Praetorian Guards. Again, the idea is that the armies are not allowed in Italy. We don't want civil war. We don't want, you know, dictators grabbing these armies. And so no armies are allowed in Italy itself. But the emperor needs an army there. And the reason is because of the cities are growing huge, a lot of unemployed still, a lot of urban problems. And so the emperor needs a private army wherever he is. His own private army. If he's in Italy, he needs this army. They're basically his bodyguards, and it kind of becomes a ceremonial thing. Some of these wealthy families will put their boys into the Praetorian Guard, but basically just to prevent urban rioting. I'll keep the cities down. I do want to mention that Augustus always presents himself as conservative, but later in life he actually became truly very conservative. If you ever pay attention to an election, the conservatives will present themselves as return to the old way. The old way is the best way. And in this case, as he gets older, he really does present this idea of returning to the old way. Well, religion. What's wrong with people nowadays? Well, they need the old religion back. And so he will want them to return to traditional religion. What is this? Well, the old religion of Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, all the old Roman gods. Go back to these temples on these festival days, participate in that. It doesn't matter whether you believe in the old gods or not, but we need to keep these traditions going just to unite us, unite the Romans as a society. He also returns to family values. You'll hear this during elections. The idea that what's wrong with people today? Well, they need a stronger family. And so what's wrong with Romans? Well, there's too many divorces, too many broken families. And this was true. Romans, that on average, were getting divorced or married 8 or 10 times. So you have all these step parents and step families and no control in the families. And so he institutes laws against divorce. You're going to get married and not get divorced. In fact, he will have also laws about marriage. You will get married. Bachelors will have taxes put upon them. Bachelors will not be allowed to participate in society or the government. And so you, as a male, you must get married now, and you will not get divorced. Well, then, also children. He wants you to have children. Well, one of the arguments against children was they're out of control. We can't control them. Well, he's going to institute laws for that. Your children will be under your absolute control. The father will return. And this is the old traditional way of the Italian household. The father has absolute power in his house. His home is his castle. And so the father will have absolute power over his wife, over his children. This will encourage you to get married and have children. This is called the paterfamilias. This is an old Roman law that kind of fallen into disuse. The idea that the father has brought you into this world, the father can take you out. And it kind of goes along with this whole imperial idea, is that he, as the emperor, has absolute power, and you in your house have absolute power over your family. So the return of the paterfamilias, the oldest male of the family, has power of life and death in the family. One problem here that he did not solve, kind of left this hanging, and it's going to be a constant problem for the Romans for the next hundreds of years, is the idea of succession. Now, mostly it's father to son. That's the typical way of doing it, but it's not set in stone that way, especially as far as the emperor is concerned. Now, the idea was that, like Caesar had done, is you write a will, and you can pick somebody from your family or not from your family to be the next emperor. But he never clarifies how this is to be done, and it worked for Caesar and it works for Augustus, but it's going to be problems later on. Augustus lived a long life, and he was able to choose his stepson. From his second marriage, he chooses his stepson, a guy named Tiberius. And there will be a peaceful transition. But this isn't always going to be the case, and it's going to be left hanging there sometimes when somebody dies early and doesn't leave a clear succession. There could be trouble with this, and this is something that they never clarify. But the idea here is that, you know, the best man should step forward, and as an emperor you should recognize talent and be able to promote that. And for most part this works. The Roman Empire will be one of successful transitions, but there are occasionally little bumps along the way.